Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, SBA Financial Resources for Solo Practitioners and Small Firms, Part 2. Today, our speakers are Beth L. Goldberg, New York District Director, and John Milano, New York District Deputy Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Today's session will run 1 hour. Participants will be muted and Q&A will be enabled. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers today, Beth L. Goldberg and John Milano. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. It's our pleasure to be here today and update your members and participants on what's currently happening at SBA and with the banking community on the Paycheck Protection Program, and to take your questions and hopefully answer your concerns. So I'll turn it over to John for a quick update, and then we'll go to Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. So the first slide here just gives you an overview of the CARES Act. The CARES Act was a $2.2 trillion emergency relief plan. The cornerstone of the CARES Act, and the one that most people ask questions about, is the Paycheck Protection Program. The legislation also included the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as EIDL, and that what it did was it allowed for nonprofits and faith-based organizations also to be eligible. So the Paycheck Protection Program is loans for up to $10 million. And the big thing about this program is that if you use the guidelines set forth by the SBA, which is 75% towards payroll and 25% towards costs such as rent, mortgage, interest, and utility, the loan can be 100% forgivable. The loan maturity rate is 2 years with a 6-month deferment. The interest rate is 1%, and the program runs through June 30th, 2020. Currently, we've gone through approximately $220 billion in round 2 of the Paycheck Protection Program. So there's still over $100 billion left. So you can still get involved in the program. Next slide, please. So applying for a Paycheck Protection Program is done through a participating lender, and you can find participating lenders on the SBA.gov website at sba.gov/paycheck protection. There you can find, if you search by zip code, you can find eligible Paycheck Protection Program lenders. To qualify for the program, less than 500 employees. And this time around, a lot of fintechs are also involved with the program. And the big thing about this program, as opposed to other SBA programs, SBA loan programs, is that there's no collateral requirement, no personal guarantee, and there are absolutely 0 fees. The way it works is the lender has delegated authority. They get to make the approval decision. SBA does not get involved with the approval decision. It comes from the lender. Once the lender approves the loan, we approve the loan. And then the funds get transferred into your account within 10 days. Next slide, please. So there you can see the website that I brought up earlier about where you could find a SBA lender. You can find more information at sba.gov/PPP. And also here is also a list of some of the fintechs that are involved this second time around. Next slide, please. These are the numbers for the Paycheck Protection Program through round 1 and round 2. The numbers for round 2 are as of Friday, May 8th. And as you can see, there were $188 billion, 2.5 million loans, almost 5,500 lenders. So there was over 500 new lenders this second time around. The average loan size dipped from $206,000 in the first round to $73,000 in the second round. So what it did was it allowed smaller businesses having additional access to these funds. And another big thing with this program is this time around, over 50% of the loans came from small to mid-sized lenders. Next slide, please. Again, here's a summary of the PPP loans as of Friday the 8th. Same numbers as you saw on the previous slide. Next slide. So how can you use your fund? You use 75% of these funds for employee compensation for an 8-week period. So the 8-week clock starts the day you receive your disbursement from your lender. So once you get approved, lender deposits funds into your account. You have 8 weeks from that point to start putting people back on payroll. Qualified business expenses for self-employment also qualify, and you would use your Schedule C. If you did not file for 2019, you are still required to submit a 2019 Schedule C to your lender. And that would include the other portion of the loan that you can include besides the 75% for payroll is mortgage interest, rent, utility, and interest on debt incurred before February 15th. Next slide, please. When should you use your fund? Like I said, as soon as you get disbursement, the 8-week period starts. Lenders must make one full disbursement within calendar days, and that's when your clock starts. So as soon as the disbursement is, the lender disperses your funds into the account, your 8-week clock starts. Next slide. What else should I know about the Paycheck Protection Program? So one of the things that you have to be cognizant of is your full-time equivalent. You must have an equivalent a number of FTEs from 2019 as you currently do. You must maintain employees' wages during that time frame. No employee can have a reduction of more than 25%. Again, you have to keep the same staff levels, but you do not have to rehire the exact same employee. It's just that you are to keep the same full-time equivalents. There'll be more guidance on the forgiveness part. Hopefully that'll come out sometime either this week or early next week. Next slide, please. So for Schedule C employees, the calculation's pretty simple. Like I said, you're going to need your 2019 Schedule C. You take your net profit from line 13, from line 31, I apologize, and it's capped at $100,000 of your net profit. You take your monthly average salary, you multiply that by 2.5 times, and that is your loan amount. And the 8-week period starts from the date of distribution from your lender. Next slide, please. So this is a good slide. If you want to take a picture of this, this will give you the loan amount calculations. It's the 2019 Schedule C, line 31, capped at $100,000. You can add to that wages and tips that you have for other employees for your sole proprietor. You can also add in health insurance, contribution to retirement, and state and local taxes. The only thing that you can't include in that is FICA. Next slide, please. If there are any farmers out there, I don't think there's any farmers out there who are part-time attorneys, but if there are, you can use Schedule F. Next slide, please. So what will a lender normally need? W-2, W-3, payroll reports, 940, 941s, records that you can show what was your payroll for 2019. That's going to be documentation that your lender will need to process your Paycheck Protection loan. Next slide. So now that you've got your loan through round one, like I says, the funding starts from the date of disbursement. The lender has 10 days to distribute those funds to the borrower, and then your 8-week clock starts. Next slide. So one of the things you should do is you should be aware of some scams out there and make sure you go to the website, to the correct website. If you ever try to, you can go to, just make sure that any website that you go to ends with a .gov. So if you're directed to a site, make sure it's not SBA.com and it's actually SBA.gov. Okay, next slide. The other program that that came through on the CARES Act is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as the EIDL loan. So currently, the EIDL loan is not accepting new applications, but there are two exceptions to that rule. First, if you're an agricultural business, the EIDL loan is open to agricultural businesses. And the second is if you initially applied for the EIDL loan under the old method and your loan number began with a 2, you can now come back into this round on the EIDL loan and reapply so that you can get a new loan number. And the really big thing and important thing to know about this is that if you did apply earlier and your loan number started with a 200 series and you don't have a 300 series loan, you won't lose your place in line for that EIDL loan. They're supposed to go back and try to recalculate and try to figure out what place in line you're in so that this way you would still be considered for the EIDL loan as if you were on the first go around. Next slide.
And if I could just interject on that, people have to enter their information the same as they entered it on the application that had the 2 number. So you need the same corporate name, the same EIN, the same social security number, and this way the system is supposed to find you and save your place in line.
Correct. So EIDL loans are up to $2 million. Loans up to $25,000 do not require any collateral. Interest rates on them is 3.75% for businesses, 2.75% for nonprofits, and the term on that loan goes for up to 30 years. And there's a 12-month deferment on those loan payments. The second part to the EIDL loan is the EIDL advance. And the EIDL advance is a grant of up to $10,000. So the first $10,000 that you get on your EIDL advance is a grant and does not need to be paid back. Next slide, please. Again, same qualifications as PPP. Less than 500 employees are eligible. And if you want to get more information on the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, you can go to sba.gov/disaster. There you'll find information on the EIDL loan. There you can also find the new application if your loan did start in the 200 series and you need to reapply. That's the website where you can go to. Next slide. So again, if you have a economic injury disaster loan and you need to know the status of it, unfortunately, our systems do not communicate with disaster systems, so we can't give you a status update. But if you do call our 800 number at 800-659-2955, you can get an operator there. They are inputting more and more loans, and they're getting better at giving you a status update on your EIDL loan. So just to back up a little bit and tell you a little background on the EIDL loan, initially we had over 5 million applications on the EIDL loan. Our system wasn't really able to handle it, so we went to a different system, a streamlined system that allowed you to get your application in faster. But unfortunately, by using all our resources on the input side, we lost a lot of the back-end capabilities. So they are trying to get those capabilities back up. So while it's very frustrating, they are doing a better job of getting you a status on your economic injury disaster loan. Next slide. So this is what the portal looks like if you were to apply for an economic injury disaster loan. Next slide. So you can get both an EIDL loan and a PPP loan. The only things that you can't do with them is you can't duplicate the benefits. So for example, if you get a PPP loan and you use it 100% towards payroll, then you get an EIDL loan and you use that for other financial obligations that you couldn't meet due to the coronavirus pandemic. That would be an eligible use of both of those loans. You just can't use the same funds for the same purpose. Have to use them for two different purposes. So you can get both an EIDL loan and a PPP loan. Next slide. Here's a couple of stories, some success stories about SBA. Next slide. And if you do need more assistance, you can go to our website, sba.gov/local assistance, and you can find a local district office, or you can call our number directly at 212-264-4354. Also, there's always free one-on-one counseling from our resource partners. Those are our small business development centers, our SCORE volunteers, our women's business centers, and our veterans business outreach centers are also able to give you one-on-one help if you do need for any one of these programs. Next slide. I'm the good-looking one on the right. Beth is the one on the left.
Okay,
And
we
if you
do have questions. Would you like me to
Sure.
read the questions? Okay, first question. A common question that's been submitted about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program is, why is the federal government looking at my credit score when I applied? Is that the determining factor on receiving EIDL aid?
So that's just one of the factors. People who early on received a rejection were actually encouraged to reapply as SBA lowered its credit standards. But it's not the determining factor, but it's one of many factors that the EIDL, people that are evaluating and doing the underwriting for EIDL will be looking at.
Next question, is a 401k company match considered part of payroll costs for a PPP loan forgiveness calculation? Also along the same lines, if the CEO, management, or workers earn large salaries or bonuses, how much can the small business use in their average monthly payroll calculation?
So salaries are capped no matter how much anyone earns at $100,000. And the calculation would then be the 100,000 divided by 12. I think John put a slide up that said it was $8,333 is the maximum that can be allocated to any one individual. And the 401k contributions are allowed. I haven't seen anything about bonuses being calculated in. Do want to tell everyone who are high net worth individuals that you do need to make a certification that your revenues are hampered and that you do need this money in order to continue to operate, and that anyone who applies and receives a loan for over $2 million will be subject to an audit by SBA's Office of the Investigator General.
Next question. We have heard from some people that they have applied for PPP, but have kept employees on the payroll. They have continued to earn their salaries despite a decline in sales and business, but have spent dollars on salaries since March. These people want to know if they messed up. Should you have just laid everyone off, waited until you got a PPP loan, and then rehire everybody?
So the purpose of the PPP loan is to keep your team intact, regardless of whether they're actually working or not, and to keep people off the unemployment rolls. So from that scenario, I don't believe that they've done anything wrong. The loan forgiveness though, as John said, will count from the 8 weeks beginning from loan disbursement. So if they did not get a loan approved, let's say to May 1, it's from May 1 going forward, not reimbursable for those other months. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, you just can't go backwards. So,
Go backwards, right.
yes, you can't go backwards. And first of all, that business owner should be commended for keeping their employees on payroll to begin with, you know, and getting through the difficult times. But what would happen then is from the date of disbursement and the 8 weeks following disbursement, that would be the forgivable portion of the loan.
Next question. I noticed on the SBA website that you have a sample application. However, my bank is asking for much more information than the SBA requires. Can they do that?
Yes. So that is, as it says, a sample application. But as John had discussed, the banks are the ones underwriting the loans, and they can use their own applications, and they can ask for as much information as they want within the guidelines. So if you're, we're looking at 2019 and have made an exception that you don't have to file your taxes yet, but you have to create the schedules. So each lender, and I have been, you know, floating around the internet looking at applications, each lender has something that usually includes all the certifications, but they can ask for more than just the basic documents because that is their underwriting procedure. It is the private bank's money that's on the line and their capital, and they're seeking our guarantee.
Next question. What are the details on PPP loan forgiveness? What kind of documentation is needed? Who do we apply to? And is it automatic after we apply, or is there a time frame?
So the SBA is hoping to release those rules toward the end of, rules and guidance toward the end of this week or next week. So we don't have anything definitive. I think what we can say is that what we do know is that the banks will be certified, reviewing your documentation, and will be certifying your loan to the SBA requesting loan forgiveness. John,
So just to
add,
just to add what Beth was saying, so a couple of things that it's just a suggestion, is that when you do get your PPP funds, I would suggest that they put those dollars into a separate account so that when it comes time to showing the disbursements, it'd be easier to show where the disbursements are coming to. But I think that most business owners can be, you know, would be pretty safe to say that if they do use the majority of their money, at least 75% of it towards payroll, and the other ones towards rent, utilities, or mortgage interest, it's pretty safe to say that the loan forgiveness shouldn't be that difficult. But there will, as Beth was saying, there's going to be additional guidance on exactly what's going to be needed for the forgiveness.
Next question. We applied for a PPP loan through our lender, but the lender has not gotten back to us or communicated anything. What should we do?
so you should be in touch with your lender because that's where your application resides. The other thing is that, you know, you are allowed to apply to more than just one lender. John gave the website sba.gov /
Paycheck
protection program /find. And you enter your zip code. There's a big map of the United States there. The thing that people should be aware of is that you will only get one loan approval, or let's put it this way, you should only get one loan approval, and you will not have the option to shop. So, you know, if you chose 3 or 4 people to apply to, when SBA issues their loan number, and it'll say SBA E-Tran, and then there'll be a big long number. That's it. You're not going to get 4 offers and 4 loans to pick from.
Next question. I received a PPP loan. I am an S Corp. I pay myself once to twice a month from my business account to my personal account. Should I schedule automatic payments to show the flow of money? And can this be forgiven if I'm using it to pay myself?
John, I'll defer that one to you.
So if you're an S corp, is that what they were?
Yes, an S Corp.
Yep. So part of the requirements of an S corp is that you have employees. So the only people who would be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program is if you have them on W-2. They have to be W-2 employees, and that would include the owner. If you haven't included yourself and you're not doing payroll, you wouldn't be eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program.
Could you confirm if only the U.S. residents, could you confirm if only the U.S. resident employees of a foreign affiliate should be included in the 500 employee calculation for PPP eligibility?
You mean for the size standard, correct?
Yes.
Yes, only U.S. citizens.
Okay.
And they're the only ones that who can receive funds from the Paycheck Protection Program also.
Okay, and these are now questions from our live audience. If a 2019 tax return is not ready and therefore Schedule C is not available, I was told a P&L statement certified by a CPA is acceptable. Is that correct? And if that's not correct, how can you fix an application already sent in?
That's a good question. I don't know where they got that from, but if you read the FAQs that are posted on our website and on the Treasury website, it specifically says in black and white that if you have not filed your 2019 return, you must send in a copy of your 2019 Schedule C. So you don't need a filed tax return for 2019, but you must submit a 2019 Schedule C.
Okay, next question. Please explain what you were explaining about fintechs like PayPal. What does that mean?
So they're not, sorry,
ahead.
Beth, go ahead.
All right, so there are companies that are online lenders that are been approved by the SBA to administer the Paycheck Protection Program. So from what I saw when I took a skim through the internet last time, for example, there were companies like Square, PayPal, and Intuit that if you were customers of theirs using their products, they were accepting applications for the PPP. There were other lenders like Cabbage, online on deck. I'm trying to think of some others. Blue Vine, Credibly, that were just open to you. You did not have to have an existing relationship with them. So those lenders are accepting them. Some of them pool the applications and search for banks as they do in their regular line of business, and some of them are set up in lending on behalf of just a few banks. So if you read through that, and they're, you know, as I was playing around, their applications look very similar to the banks, and they're requesting the same documents, and they've been trained, and they have you know, lending agreements with the SBA. So John, I don't know, is there a place that there's listed the fintech companies? I thought that was on one of the slides that you had.
It was on one of the sides. It's not a complete list, just a sample list. But for the most part, they're non-depository lenders, fintechs.
Meaning they don't have an online presence, an on-street presence of retail banking.
And they usually don't take deposits.
And they don't take deposits, correct.
Okay, next question. I am a sole proprietor with 2 full-time employees. I applied for EIDL. I received $2,000. Will I receive another $1,000, and will I be considered for the $10,000 grant minus the $2,000 I previously received?
So if you have 2 employees, what the SBA did was we had a limited amount of money in the pot to go to the EIDL advance. So we came up with a formula where we gave out $1,000 for every employee for the EIDL advance. Now remember, the EIDL advance is not a $10,000 grant. It's up to $10,000. So we came up with a formula where for every employee, you would get $1,000. So if you had 2 employees, you would get $2,000. If you have 4 employees, you get $4,000. But it is not a $10,000 grant. The grant is up to $10,000.
Next question. I heard if I got the SBA disaster relief loan for $1,000, I would need to give it back if I got a PPP loan. Is this accurate?
It's not accurate, but John, does the same use of funds, the application had to be for a different use of funds. Is that correct?
Correct. So what you would do is you would take the amount that you got for the PPP and you'd reduce it by $1,000. That would be your loan amount for the Paycheck Protection Program. And what would happen then is you would use your $1,000 EIDL grant towards payroll plus your Paycheck Protection. And if there's anything left over, those additional funds can be used for rent, utilities, and mortgage interest.
Next question. I have a 2-person partnership that is less than a year old and as such doesn't have tax records for 2019. Is my firm still eligible for a PPP loan?
Yes, they would be eligible. The date, I believe, is January 1st to February 15th if they were in business, but they would have to show payroll records to show what their payroll was during that time frame.
Okay, I am a sole proprietor attorney with no employees. Currently, I am working from home. I have lost substantial income. Does the PPP forgiveness apply to the approved amount I received? If so, up to what amount?
So the loan, go ahead,
Go ahead,
John.
Beth.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
So I'm assuming they're a Schedule C employee, a Schedule C business, or if they're a Schedule C business and they're the only employee, then they would get forgiveness on whatever the calculation would be over the 8-week period. If they got payroll and they were a W-2 employee, they would get the same thing. They would get forgiveness on whatever their payroll would be for that 8-week period. So I'm not really sure exactly what the question is asking.
And let me just take that, if I may, Tony, for a minute. And you know, I know a lot of concerns about people in New York City is the rent. So if they got money and used less than 75% for payroll and used more than 25%, say, toward their rent cost, that wouldn't be forgivable, but would be become a 2-year, 24-month loan with 6 months forgiveness and payments over 18 months, and it would be at 1%.
Right, and they would prorate those dollars if you didn't match if you didn't get to the 75. So remember, we didn't get 100% guidance on this. So from what our understanding is that if you don't reach the 75% level, you're going to get a partial forgiveness. Okay, exactly how that's going to work, we're not sure yet. But you will get a partial forgiveness, and then just as Beth explained, the rest of that loan would be paid back over 18 months because the first 6 months is the deferment period. But remember, interest starts from day one.
Okay, next question. Received $1,000 in bank account. No other communication provided from SBA. As a solo practitioner, does this represent the $1,000 advance per solo employee, me? How is the amount of EIDL loan determined by the SBA?
So that's a great question. First of all, he's a sole practitioner, so the $1,000 is his idle advance payment. So that's what he would get. The rest of the loan, the idle loan, is going to be determined by the Office of Disaster Assistance, and they are going to review financial records that they're able to pull. If they need additional information or they need additional financial records, they are going to ask you for that, but they'll be making the determination about how much your idle loan will be.
Okay, I'm going to do my best with this one.
Mhm.
Does the definition of utilities in Section 1106 of the CARES Act also apply to the use of utilities in Section 1102 of the CARES Act? Section 1102 does not define utilities.
See, now I know we're dealing with attorneys.
I was just going to say the same thing.
So when they say utilities, for the most part, okay, it is past due obligations that you were not able to meet due to the coronavirus pandemic.
So, John, are we talking about Con Edison, gas, electric,
Correct.
telephone,
Correct. Yep.
oil if you're heating your premises with oil, whatever anyone would think of about utilities, if that person cares to translate that for us or send that on as a question later, Tony,
Yeah.
we're happy to
Yes.
look that up.
You can send any questions that you have after this webinar to membership@NYCLA.org, NYCLA.org. Next question, how many hours worked a week is considered full-time employment?
40 hours.
Okay, next question. Do I have 8 weeks to bring people back and then start to pay them from the time they come back? Or is the wage portion only forgivable if I start paying them from the time I get the loan for the next 2 months forward?
Okay, so you can't wait. Once you receive your loan disbursement, the clock starts. So there is a little bit of leeway and I'll tell you what just give you an example of leeway would be is, let's say your payroll starts on Monday and you get your check, you get your disbursement on a Wednesday or a Thursday. They would expect you to call back your employees on Monday, and that's when your 8-week clock would start. So a lot of people have asked that, my business is closed currently and I won't open up for the next 8 weeks. It doesn't work that way. You don't get the option of deferring that loan payment to when it fits your need, unfortunately. I understand it would make more sense, but that's not the way the legislation was written. The clock starts when disbursement is, when the bank makes a disbursement. And there is nothing in the legislation that says there has to be work performed by the employee, okay? So my recommendation is once you get a disbursement, you call back your employees and you get them back on payroll.
Next question. Can you apply for the PPP loan if self-employed as an independent contractor and clients are still paying you?
Well, you have to show, so part of it, so exactly what Beth was saying earlier is that there's a self-certification in your application, and the self-certification is that you are having some sort of financial difficulties due to the coronavirus pandemic. So you're going to have to make that certification, and you're not. And the other thing you're going to be certifying is that you're not able to meet your obligations due to it. So I'm going to leave that for you to decide, but you do have to make those certifications, just so you understand.
Next question. My PPP was funded on May 4th, but I paid my office rent on May 1st. Will all of my May rent not be accounted for in the rent forgivable portion?
So let me tell you, so remember the Paycheck Protection Program is called just that, the Paycheck Protection Program. So the way I like to explain it to people is that 75-25 is almost like a minimum rule, right? So you should think of it as a list of sources of funds. So your first use of the funds should be first towards payroll. And then if there's anything left over, those funds should go to rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. If you do it that way, that's your safest way. If you decide to use the majority of the paycheck protection on rent, we're not sure exactly how that's going to work, but there may be a reduction in the forgiveness portion. But I think the safest way to do it is, if you think about it, is that your first priority on your paycheck protection loan is to pay payroll. Use that all up first, and whatever's left over, use it towards rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. If you do it that way, I think you'll be safe.
Next question, can I pay my owner's draw a slightly larger amount than the monthly average shown on my 2019 Schedule C?
So that, you know, I don't know what percentage he's talking about, you know, a larger draw. I would say if he's at 5-10%, I don't know exactly what the numbers, Beth, I don't know if you know it, but there is
I actually think that might be something in the guidance that might come out for, especially if they're concerned about loan forgiveness. You know, we're not sure. So we're not sure if you're going to get the opportunity to sit down with your banker and say, here's what I did, versus what John said, to set up an account, a separate account where it's clear what your draw was, and then retirement benefits, health insurance, right? All are eligible under the PPP as itemized expenses. And then your rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. So I don't know if your draw includes all those other expenses, or it may, under this instance, be better to itemize that.
Yeah, so the only thing that I know that is in black and white is that there can't be a 25% reduction in payroll. But I haven't seen anything specific about if you want to if there is a percentage on how much you can overpay yourself from previous, what you previously earned.
Next question. Kind of covered it in some other questions, but this is a little bit different. As a sole proprietor with no employees and no office that I pay rent to, I am still losing income and working from home. Does PPP forgiveness apply to reimbursing me for lost income and a portion of my home rental?
So you can't use your home rental. That you definitely can't do. So what you can do, first of all, none of these programs is for loss of income. It's for the ability to not meet obligations due to the coronavirus pandemic. So there is none of the programs that allow you to make up for income. But what it does is, if you're a Schedule C business and you figure out what your loan amount would be, and that would be line 31 on the Schedule C, and you divide that by 12 and multiply that by 2.5, you can take that as a distribution for the 8 weeks following after the lender distributes those dollars in your account.
Before we go to the next question, I just want to mention, very important, in one of the last screens, and Tony, I don't know if you can find it, we have partners. We call them resource partners, which is not necessarily a private sector term, but SCORE, our women business centers, and our small business development centers located on college campuses are part of our network. SBA contracts with these organizations to provide services to businesses on a one-to-one basis. And those organizations, just for example, in Manhattan, they're located at Columbia, Pace, and Baruch, can do what which doesn't happen in my office, where they will actually look at your paperwork one-on-one and your schedules. And as this guidance is issued at the end of this week or next week, be able to show you, go over exactly what you need to give to the bank. As it becomes clearer to us these organizations are trained by us. When you call our office, we're going to refer you, if you want someone to look at your paperwork, to these organizations. And Tony, Matt will provide you with the New York District Resource Guide link. And on pages 11 and 12 are the resource, our list of all our partners. Everyone is up and running remote access, and they can either do a video conference with you or an old-fashioned phone conference and be able to go over your work and help you with these specific applications. And as I said, is when the guidance comes out to help you see if you're compliant for the 75% forgiveness.
That would be great. We will make sure we distribute that after the webinar.
Okay, and on page 32 of that book is, which is available online, always 24/7 on the link, is a list of our micro lenders with which do credit repair work with clients. So if anyone gets rejected and wants to understand their credit, the micro lenders are set up to help them do that. And there are about 5 or 6 of them listed that are in the district, and that's page 32.
Okay, next question. My bank records show PPP funding 10 days prior to my actually receiving the funds deposited in my account. When does the 8 weeks start running?
I'm a little confused with the question.
Yes, me too.
I'll read it again.
Yeah,
My bank records show PPP funding 10 days prior to my actually receiving the funds deposited into my account. When does the 8 weeks start running?
So I'm assuming he got an approval 10 days earlier, and then he got a deposit 10 days after the approval. So I'm going to try to answer the best I can. Your 8-week period starts from the date of distribution from your lender.
I would agree with that, from the disbursement of the funds.
Yep.
Okay, next question. My PPP and SBA loans were put into my business account. Should they be in separate accounts?
So they don't have to be in separate accounts, okay? It was, like I said earlier, it was just me personally, and just my recommendation that I give out is that if you open up an account and move those funds into a separate account, and it's just clearer to show disbursement. It also, I believe that when it comes time to showing the disbursements, you don't have somebody reviewing everything in your business account. You could just show them that one account and show them that the money was transferred from your business account to this one account, and then you can show all the disbursement. So understand that there is no requirement to have a separate account. It was just a recommendation or a suggestion to make it easier for you when you try to prove the disbursements of the funds.
Right, there's no commingling. So if you did, if you won the lottery and you got both loans, then you should consider setting up 2 separate accounts and run the expenses in each of the accounts that are applicable to, to those programs.
I just think it makes your accounting a little bit easier, that's all.
Next question. If the economy reopens and the EIDL arrives after a business is back in operation, can the business choose to reject the approved EIDL or choose to reduce the obtained loan amount? And if so, how do you communicate this to the SBA?
That's a great question. First of all, nobody has to accept any loan amount. Okay, so before you accept the amount, you can reject it. Number 2, when you do get approved for your EIDL loan amount, you'll get an email and they'll show you the maximum amount that you are approved for. You can always ask for a lesser amount if that's what you wish to do. So to answer your question, no, you don't have to accept the money. And 2, you can always take a lesser amount if you don't feel you need the full amount. And 3, you can always prepay the loan early if you'd like to.
Okay, next question. Do utilities include payments for employees' cell phones? What about reimbursement paid to employees for their home internet because they're working from home?
That's not included in the Paycheck Protection Program.
Does payroll need to be prorated, or can you expense all payments made even if it's for relating to employee work prior to the receipt of the loan?
So as we,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay, Beth. So as we stated earlier, you can't go backwards, okay? So the date the 8-week clock starts is the date that your lender deposits the money in your account. If you've made previous salaries before that date, unfortunately, there is no forgiveness of that, and you can't use the Paycheck Protection Program for those dollars you've already paid. So it's from data disbursements and the 8-week period forward.
Okay, next question. How is EIDL processing applications from solo practitioners for separate and unaffiliated business operations? I've reported more than one Schedule C on tax returns for 2018 and prior years, have not filed yet for 2019. Filed 2 EIDL applications, one as a solo practitioner as a lawyer, the other an e-commerce business, which is an LLC. Will the $1,000 advance per employee be limited to one business only? That's a very packed question.
Yeah, so the advanced portion is per business. So if he has one business with 3 employees and another business with 2 employees, each business will get their own advance, and each business will be considered for each of their EIDL loans.
Okay, next question. I am a single member LLC, Schedule C, no other employees. My income was over $100,000. My approved PPP loan amount was $20,833. My understanding is that the forgivable income portion over 8 weeks is capped at $15,385, which is less than 75%. Isn't it a mathematical impossibility to meet the 75% threshold for income forgiveness unless the remainder can be spent on utilities? Can more than $15,385 be spent on income?
So the actual number is,
$20,833 was what she was given.
okay, so really, let me just, give me 1 second. I'm sorry. So the most that they can get on a monthly basis towards payroll is $8,333, okay? So they would get that twice. That would be the most that you can get towards payroll. Anything above that can be used for rent and utilities. It seems like her loan was initially overfunded. I don't know how they came up. She got $20,000, she said?
$20,833.
Right, $20,833 is the amount you should have gotten. So it's $8,333 for each month as payroll, and then half for rent and utilities. So she would have to spend 75% of that. So she could pay herself $8,333 each month. Does that make sense? Because it comes out to the 28th. Here, I'll figure it out for you again. So if you take the 100,000 and you divide that by 12, it comes out to $8,333. That's your monthly income. You multiply that by 2.5, your loan amount is $20,833. So she would take 16,000 of it as payroll, and then the rest would be used for rent, utility, and mortgage interest.
Next question, and I believe our last question.
Just to go back to it, if she took $8,333 each time, that would be over $16,000, which is more than 75%. So she'd be eligible for the forgiveness.
Okay, next question. Is there any regulation or restriction on the timing of the disbursements of PPP funding within the 8-week period? For example, if I pay payroll for the first 6 weeks and then use funds in lump sum to pay rent arrears the last 2 weeks of the 8 weeks?
You can't do that. You have to do payroll for the entire 8 weeks. You can't pick and choose which period you want to use payroll for and what you want to use for other expenses.
Okay, and we've got one last question. I just read that worked at least 30 hours per week counted as full-time for SBA program, but John just said it is 40 hours. Can you clarify which one it is?
I'm not, we can get better guidance on that. As far as my understanding, it was 40, but he could be right. I don't know where he's reading his 30 from.
Well, we are at 1 o'clock, and I would like to thank everyone for attending and participating today, especially Beth Goldberg and John Milano, and behind the scenes, Matthew Coleman, who's been very supportive. We will get an email out to everyone who was on this webinar with all the information we mentioned. We will post the PowerPoint presentation so that you can download that information, and we'll also have this up on our website within 48 hours, so it's available on demand. Thank you all very much, and stay safe.